I'm David Smith, retiring Gillespie Director, 12 years on your board, and Chairman of the Energy and our Strategy-Policy Committees of our board. You are the owners of our cooperative, so I'll be reporting to you as my boss on what we have done for you in the past year to keep your lights on at rates you can afford to pay. Our focus at the Energy Committee in the past year has been on follow-up duties arising from our decision not to renew our wholesale power supply agreement with LCRA. We reported last year that we signed up with CPS of San Antonio as our primary power supplier after LCRA. Since then, we have secured about 20% of our needs with a second supplier as a part of our strategy to avoid single-source situations in the future. And we have power sources available to cover our needs in the event we should be released by LCRA before our contract expires in June of 2016. So the lights will be on at rates that are lower than LCRA. Our separation from LCRA is not working out as we had hoped. LCRA responded to our request for early termination of our contract with terms that we were not willing to present to you, our owners, because we could not recommend them. There's a further complication arising from what we see as discrimination between departing and continuing customers of LCRA. We are forced to buy all power requirements from LCRA, while continuing customers can buy portions of their needs at lower cost from the wholesale power market. We have initiated legal action on this problem. My personal view is the issues that divide us have escalated beyond the point of recovery through residual goodwill, so our separation from LCRA will become more complicated. Our Strategy Committee has the assignment to look ahead, not just beyond LCRA, but beyond CPS and other supply contracts. This means about 10 years ahead to 2021 or 2022. We see reasons for profound concern. For roughly 15 years since deregulation of the Texas power markets, we have experienced growth of electric energy demand without supporting growth of generation capacity. This has created a real power shortage as an outcome of what is at the root cause of it all, a political stalemate over adding generation versus reducing demand. The problem is we don't see this stalemate being resolved via the normal political process to some agreement on how to proceed. If this continues, our co-op will face challenges to buy the power we need about 10 years out. At the Strategy Committee, our problem is to identify our options and their costs versus benefits. We are on the assignment. There are options, but they involve increases in investment and complications of the business. So if we must, we know what we need to do to keep the lights on at rates we can afford to pay.
Good evening. My name is Stanley Casey, one of 3 directors from Llano County. I am the board treasurer and serve as chairman of the Finance Committee, which is charged with the financial oversight of the co-op. With the help of Chief Financial Officer Janet Herber, we've created a number of visuals to give you an understanding of the financial condition of Central Texas Electric Co-op. Assets represent what the cooperative owns. The largest asset is in the distribution and transmission system, which is valued at $132 million and represents 89% of total assets. Physically, this represents almost 6,000 miles of power lines located in 11 counties. This is a large geographic area that covers 4,600 square miles and requires a group of dedicated professionals to maintain and, when necessary, repair. We have offices and warehouse facilities in Llano, Kingsland, Fredericksburg, and Mason, which represent 3% of our assets. Investments, receivables, cash, and inventory comprise the remaining 8% of our assets. This next chart shows the equity and liabilities of the co-op. Equity in the electric system equates to your ownership of the system. Your ownership represents 37%, or $55 million. Long-term debt and current liabilities represent the remainder of this chart. We try to maintain an equity position of between 35 and 40%, which allows us to borrow the additional capital needed to build and improve the system. Now let us take a look at our source of revenue, which you are probably most interested in, since that is how you fund the co-op. We'll use a sample dollar bill. You will see these three items each month on your statement. The first is a power cost pass-through, the largest part of the bill. It is for generation of electricity, and it goes straight to our power provider, which now is predominantly LCRA. The next two items fund our co-op. The distribution access charge is a fixed charge to cover the cost of providing service to your address. The access charge for rural utilities is higher than for city municipal utilities, since in rural areas there are a smaller number of meters per mile of line. The distribution energy charge makes up the remainder of revenue needed to operate the co-op. Other revenue includes miscellaneous items such as late charges, interest, and earnings from associated organizations. So where does your dollar go? Again, the power cost represents the largest amount. It is more than half of every dollar collected. Therefore, it is a high priority for the co-op to seek the lowest cost power provider that we can find. This is exactly what we have accomplished by not renewing our LCR contract and acquiring new contracts with CPS and NextEra that will take effect in 2016. They will be much less expensive power providers for us in the future. Now let's take a look at operations and maintenance cost, which represents about 21 cents out of your dollar. Obviously, this portion covers our cost of operating and maintaining the electric system. Depreciation. Each asset is depreciated each year depending on its useful life. The margins, otherwise known as patronage capital, represents a member's share of revenue collected. This portion is actually your ownership in the system. It is the excess revenue over expenses that become capital credits. The credits are allocated to members in proportion to the amount each member paid for electric service. The margins are an important factor that demonstrates our financial health when it becomes necessary for us to borrow money to build and improve the system. The financial strength of the co-op determines when and how much capital credits to refund. This past year, the co-op refunded over $600,000 in capital credits. Over the course of the co-op's history, we've been able to refund a total amount of $9 million. The interest represents the amount we pay for money we borrow for building and improvements to the system. Ending last year with a 37% equity represents one of the highest in the co-op's history. With strong margins this year to date, we believe the co-op is in the best financial condition it has ever been in.
I'm sure you can see from these presentations that your board is working hard for you. We are member focused. No matter what comes our way, we'll continue to put you, our members, first. Costs are rising for all of us, but when it comes to your electric bill, our rates are set simply to cover the cost of doing business, not to generate profits for distant stockholders. The bottom line, we exist only to serve you and meet your needs for safe, reliable, and affordable power. Thank you for coming tonight. It shows your interest in the co-op you own. Your board will continue to keep you updated on the latest events as they unfold.